It started with a knock I almost didn't answer. Not because I was too busy, or scared, or anything like that. But because I'd gotten used to the silence. Used to the quiet hum of my fridge, the creak in the hallway floor, the way the wind pressed against the window like it had nowhere better to be. I was 56, a widow for 6 years. My name's Nathalia Barrera. And most days, I didn't expect much. Just coffee in the morning, maybe a walk around the block if my knees didn't complain too loudly. No surprises. No sudden bursts of anything. But that knock, that soft, almost shy knock on my front door? It changed everything. Let me ask you something, have you ever ignored a knock, then spent the rest of your life wondering what would have happened if you answered it? Yeah, that's where this story begins. So before I go on, do me a favor, hit that like button if you've ever made a choice that flipped your world upside down, and drop a comment if you've ever felt invisible, until someone makes you feel seen again. Anyway, I pulled my robe tighter as I shuffled to the door. My hair was still damp from a lazy shower, and I wasn't wearing a drop of makeup. I figured it was a delivery or maybe Ashley Fisher, my nosy neighbor, was here to ask why my hydrangeas looked sad. I opened it. And there he was. Mikhail Guzman. 19. Tall. A little sweaty from the Texas heat. Holding a paper bag like it was a gift from the gods. Hey, Miss Nathalia, he said, flashing that crooked smile. Mom asked me to drop this off for you. His voice had changed since I last saw him. Deeper. Like it had grown roots. I blinked, confused for half a second. Then I remembered. Bianca Galvin's boy. The same kid who used to spill grape juice on my rug and laugh like it was confetti. Only now, he had arms. And curls. And a jawline. And no trace of baby fat. Oh my goodness, Mikhail, I said, stepping back without meaning to. You've grown. He chuckled. Yeah. College does that to you. He handed me the bag. She said this was leftover stew and some peach muffins. And Tupperware of her lemon rice, just for you. I smiled, heart fluttering in a way it hadn't in years. Not in a big way, not like fireworks. More like the soft thump of a hummingbird's wings, somewhere low and warm. You're sweet to bring it, I said. Come in for some tea? He glanced back at his car. Then at me. Only if you're sure. I insist. He stepped inside like he belonged there. And something about that felt nice. I didn't plan anything. I didn't feel anything I wasn't supposed to. Not yet. But loneliness has a way of noticing things the heart forgot it could feel. And Mikhail, he was just standing there, all grown up, making my kitchen look too small. I poured the tea slowly, partly to steady my hands, partly to buy myself time. Mikhail sat at the small wooden table I'd had since my wedding. The one with the faint scratch across the top where my late husband, Gail, once carved our initials with a dull pocket knife and a dumber grin. I hadn't touched that table in weeks. Ate most of my meals on the couch, hunched over a tray, alone with reruns and regret. But now, there was a boy, no, a man, sitting there, smiling, looking around like he belonged in the scene. How's school? I asked, passing him his cup. He shrugged. Stressful. Boring. A lot of late nights pretending to understand economics. I chuckled. Sounds about right. And you? He asked, eyes soft. Have you been holding up? I wasn't expecting the question. People usually stop asking after year 3. They figure grief comes with an expiration date. I nodded too quickly. Fine. You know, keeping busy. He glanced around the kitchen, then toward the hallway. His eyes landed on the mantel in the living room. Is that him? I followed his gaze. The photo, the one of Gail in his army uniform, mid-laugh, his arm slung over my shoulder like he never planned to let go. I swallowed. Yeah, I said, quieter than I meant to. That's Gail. Mikhail stood and walked over to it. Picked up the frame, thumb brushing across the glass. He had a strong smile, he said. He had a strong everything, I replied, the words slipping before I could filter them. And then, my voice cracked. Just the tiniest bit. But I felt it. That old, dry ache in my throat that hadn't made a sound in months. I turned away, busying myself with a napkin that didn't need folding. Sorry, I whispered. Mackay set the frame down gently. You don't have to be. I heard the creak of the drawer under the sink. This one's stuck, he called out. It always jams. Been meaning to fix it. He tugged at it, then grunted. Mind if I give it a shot? Be my guest. I walked over, still dabbing my eyes like I wasn't falling apart over a 20-year-old photo. He squatted down, yanked it harder, and the drawer finally gave way, spilling a few tools, pens, and one very old birthday card I meant to throw away last year. He picked it up, laughing. Happy 50th, huh? Let's not talk about that, I smirked, snatching it from him. But at that moment, our hands touched. Just for a second. And I felt it. Not electricity. Not lightning. Just warmth. Human warmth. Do you know how long it's been since someone touched me without pulling away? Not out of obligation, or sympathy, or a quick hug before goodbye. But just, touched me? No gloves, no guilt, no goodbye behind their eyes? Years. His hand brushed mine like it was nothing. But to me, it was everything. I pulled back, pretending to laugh it off, but something inside me shifted. Mackay looked up, his eyes searching mine for a reaction I wasn't ready to admit. You okay? He asked. I'm fine. Lie. But it sounded better than. I'm not fine, and I haven't been since my husband died, and I don't know what I'm doing inviting a 19-year-old into my kitchen just to feel something again. Instead, I said, you fixed the drawer. He grinned. I've got the magic touch. And my heart, that tired, quiet heart, skipped a beat like it hurt him too loud. Mackay glanced at his phone and then toward the window. Looks like I should head out before that storm hits. I followed his gaze. The sky had shifted, clouds bruising, thick with something heavy. And right on cue, the first rumble rolled through the distance, low and stretched, like the sky was clearing its throat. You sure you want to drive in that? I asked, already knowing my answer. He hesitated. Then the rain started. Not a drizzle. Not the kind that tiptoes in. This was a full, sharp downpour, water slapping the sidewalk like it was late for something. I took a step closer to the window. You'll hydroplane before you hit the corner. Mackay grinned. So, you're saying I should stay? I smiled, slow. I'm saying I just made fresh ginger tea. He laughed, tossing his hoodie over his head, soaked through from the short walk to his car earlier. As he peeled it off, his shirt underneath clung to him, nearly see-through in the worst way. I'll grab you a towel, I said quickly, turning before I could embarrass myself with how long I was staring. When I returned from the linen closet, he'd pulled the wet t-shirt over his head too and was running his hands through his curls, shaking out the rain like a golden retriever. And there it was. His back. Lean. Cut. Still damp from the rain, with water tracing down his spine like fingers I shouldn't imagine. He reached up, rubbing the towel through his hair, muscles shifting beneath his skin. I stood there for a beat too long, towel in hand, thoughts everywhere else. Stop. You're acting ridiculous. He's just a kid. A sweet, helpful kid. But the guilt didn't cancel the feeling. If anything, they tangled together in my chest like vines. The shame and the spark. Here, I said, finally breaking the silence and handing him the towel. Thanks, he smiled, taking it with one hand while rubbing his chest dry with the other. I should have looked away. I really should have. But I didn't. I hadn't looked at a man like that in years. Hadn't felt that soft flutter in my stomach since Gail. And that's what hurt the most, realizing I'd forgotten how it felt. Not even the guilt. Just the shock that something inside me still worked like that. He walked to the window, peeking outside as thunder cracked again. "Guess I'm stuck here for a while," he said, voice low and calm. "I guess you are," I replied, trying to hide the tremble in mine. The living room felt warmer suddenly, not from the tea or the rain or the closed windows, but from him. The quiet tension, unspoken and thick. Not inappropriate. Not yet. But lingering. Soft. Present. And then, he turned. Just a simple turn. But it felt like everything slowed. His face was still damp, curls dark from the rain, shirtless, towel in hand, that same crooked grin blooming. "I like storms," he said. "Makes the world feel softer." I nodded. Me too, I thought. Because at that moment, with the rain tapping on the glass and the weight of his glance landing gently on me, I didn't feel old. I didn't feel broken or forgotten or invisible. I felt seen. And alive. The next morning started like most of mine do, quietly, slowly, with the kind of silence that lingers in the walls. I hadn't slept much. My dreams had been strange, soft flashes of warmth, rain, skin, laughter. Waking up felt like stepping out of a movie I wasn't supposed to enjoy as much as I did. I was still in my robe when the knock came again. Not loud. Just enough to make my heart tap against my ribs. I didn't check the peephole. I knew who it was. Mackay. I opened the door, and there he stood, same crooked grin, holding a small toolkit. "Thought I'd fix that sink you mentioned," he said casually, as if yesterday hadn't melted the air between us. "You don't have to," I started. He tilted his head. "Unless you'd rather have water dripping on your feet every time you brush your teeth." I laughed. "Come in." He walked past me, and I caught the scent of soap again, that same mix of mint, cedar, and something younger than me. I shut the door and turned to find him already walking toward the bathroom like he'd been there 1,000 times. I should have changed into jeans. Or at least put on a t-shirt. But I didn't. I was still in my robe. Not on purpose. Not for him. Just, for comfort. I leaned against the doorframe as he got on his knees beside the vanity. He opened the cabinet under the sink, assessing the slow drip that had annoyed me for months. "It's the seal," he mumbled. "Might need to tighten the compression nut." I had no idea what that meant. But I nodded like I did. "Are you good with tools?" I asked, teasing. He shot me a smirk. "Let's just say I like fixing things with my hands." Something about the way he said it made my breath hitch. I crouched next to him, not thinking. Or maybe thinking too much. I just wanted to be closer. Our shoulders touched. I could feel the warmth of his arm next to mine. And suddenly, I wasn't watching the leak anymore. I was watching him. The way his mouth moved when he focused. The curve of his jawline. The little scar just under his ear, barely visible unless you were this close. He looked up. I didn't expect it. I wasn't ready. Our faces were right there. So close I could count the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. So close I could feel the breath between us catch, like the air was holding still, just waiting. My lips parted. His eyes dropped to them. Time didn't stop, but it did slow. His hand froze on the wrench. He looked at me like I was something fragile, but wanted. He leaned in, just slightly. Testing the air. Testing me. I should have pulled back. Should have said something light to break the moment. But I didn't move. Not an inch. Until the last possible second. I inhaled sharply and turned my head, just enough for the kiss to miss. Barely. His lips brushed the corner of my cheek instead, warm, soft, hesitant. I closed my eyes for a beat. "Sorry," he said, his voice barely a whisper. I opened my eyes, heartbeat drumming in my ears. No, I whispered back. Don't be. But I didn't say more. And neither did he. He just turned back to the pipe, hand steady again, like nothing had happened. But everything had. And I knew, from that moment on, we weren't going to stay in safe territory much longer. That night, sleep didn't sleep. I tried. God knows I tried. I turned the fan on low, took 2 melatonin, even opened the window to let the cool breeze in. But none of it worked. All I could think about was the way he looked at me when our faces met under the sink. That pause. That breath we both held. And the brush of his lips on my cheek, not quite a kiss, but close enough to burn. I lay there, still in that same robe, my body tangled in sheets that suddenly felt too warm. I reached for my phone. Me, thank you for today. I stared at the message for a second before hitting send. Simple. Safe. It gave me room to pretend it was nothing. The reply came fast. Mackay, I couldn't stop thinking about you. My heart stuttered. Not because I didn't expect it. But because I did. Deep down, I'd felt the weight of that moment pressing against both of us all day. I typed. Deleted. Typed again. Me, come back. Just to talk. It was a lie. We both knew it. But it gave us something to pretend with. 10 minutes passed. Then headlights crawled across my wall. My chest tightened. I stayed in bed. Waited. Then the soft knock. Not urgent. Not loud. Just enough. I opened the door without turning on the lights. He stood there, in a black hoodie and jeans, his hair still damp from a second shower. Neither of us said anything. I stepped aside. He walked in. We didn't talk. We didn't need to. I led him down the hallway like sleepwalking. The bedroom felt smaller now. The air is thicker. My robe hung loose. I didn't fix it. He stood near the edge of the bed, waiting, respectful, quiet. I turned to face him. And for a moment, we just looked at each other. Not as a boy and a woman. Not as someone's son and someone's widow. Just two people. Breathing. Wanting. He stepped forward. Slow. I didn't back away. His hand found mine, fingers curling gently. Then his other hand lifted, brushing a strand of hair from my face. His touch was light, like he was still asking for permission. I gave it. With a nod. A breath. A closeness. His lips found mine, soft, unsure, like we were learning each other by feel. It wasn't wild. It wasn't urgent. It was deliberate. A kiss built out of days of silence, eye contact, almosts and what-ifs. I reached up, fingers finding the side of his neck, tracing the line of his jaw. He pulled me in, one hand on my waist, the other sliding to my lower back. I felt myself melt into him, like I'd been holding myself up for too long and he'd finally given me permission to stop pretending I wasn't tired. My robe slipped off my shoulder. I didn't fix it. His hand grazed my skin, warm, unsure, reverent. And still, we didn't speak. Because words would have broken the spell. And for the first time in years, I didn't want to explain myself. I just wanted to feel. And at that moment, I did. Every inch of me, alive. The sun slipped in slowly, soft streaks of gold climbing through the blinds, brushing against the walls like whispers. I was already awake. Lying still, not daring to move, barely breathing, as if any shift might break the moment I didn't want to end. Mackay was beside me. His arm was draped over my waist, his hand resting just above my hip, his face turned toward me, eyes closed, lips slightly parted in sleep. And for a second, he looked like a dream. Boyish. Calm. Vulnerable in a way he never let show when he was awake. There was something almost sacred about the way he slept, like time had paused just for this. For us. I watched the gentle rise and fall of his chest. counted it. And in those quiet, early hours, I remembered what it felt like to be 20. Not in my body, my knees wouldn't let me forget the years, but in my heart. I remembered late nights wrapped in someone's arms. I remembered laughing so hard I forgot to be careful. I remembered touch without consequences, kisses without whispers of guilt. But that was before. Before widowhood. Before the silence. Before the world reminded me that desire, for women like me, is supposed to fade quietly, like perfume at the end of a long night. And yet, here he was. Asleep in my bed. Breathing next to me like it meant something. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't a dream. This had happened. His warmth still lingered in the sheets. His scent, that mix of cedar and rain, still clung to my pillow. I sat up slowly, robe slipping over my shoulder again. I tied it tighter this time. The guilt didn't punch me. It whispered. Like fog rolling in across a calm lake. What did I do? I walked quietly to the kitchen, my bare feet soft on the tiles. I poured a cup of coffee, hoping the bitterness would help me breathe. And then, my phone buzzed. I flinched like I'd been caught. Bianca. I stared at the screen. Her contact photo, a smiling selfie of us at her birthday dinner last year, stared back at me like a mirror I didn't want to look into. Her message was simple. Hey hon. Did Mackay return my glass baking pan? He said he dropped off some food yesterday but wasn't sure where it ended up, grinning face with sweat. I read it twice. Then a third time. My stomach twisted. She had no idea. She was just being her usual sweet, nosy self. And that made it worse. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Me, yep. Got it safe and sound. I'll return it this weekend. Hashtag 2 hearts. Lie. My hand shook a little after I hit send. I stared at it like the words might disappear if I regretted them hard enough. But they didn't. The truth was. I lied. To her. To myself. Because the reality was sinking in now, slow and heavy like syrup. Mackay wasn't just a storm I let pass through. He was a door I opened, fully knowing the weight behind it. And now, I couldn't unfeel what had been felt. Couldn't untouch what had already burned through me. In the other room, he stirred. I stood there, coffee in hand, watching the sun creep across my countertop, and I knew. This wasn't just complicated. It was dangerous. It was a little past noon when I heard the knock. I froze. Not because I didn't know who it was, but because I did. When I opened the door, there he stood, Mackay, smiling, casual, holding a paper grocery bag like this was just another normal day. Figured you might be hungry, he said, holding the bag up slightly. I blinked. You brought food? He shrugged. Or ingredients. Depends on how bad I mess this up. I stepped aside, heart thudding. You're brave. He grinned, walking in like yesterday hadn't happened, or maybe like it had, and now everything felt different because of it. He set the bag on the kitchen counter and started pulling things out, a box of pasta, 2 tomatoes, gee. Our hands touched twice. I didn't pull away. When he tried to grate the cheese, he looked so serious it made me snort. You're gonna lose a finger. You gonna kiss it better if I do? I paused. That silence stretched, playful, but tight underneath. He looked up at me, hand still on the grater. Nathalia, he said, voice lower now. Do you regret it? The room stopped spinning. The laughter faded. The smell of simmering garlic became background noise. I looked at him, really looked. His eyes weren't teasing anymore. They were searching. And mine? Mine were tired of lying. I don't know what I feel, I said softly. He waited. I stepped closer, heartbeat climbing. But I know I feel something. I feel alive. For the first time in a long, long time. Mackay dropped the grater. It clanged against the counter and rolled. He stepped toward me, one hand at my waist, the other brushing a curl from my cheek. He kissed me. No hesitation this time. It started slow, like yesterday. But not unsure. This time it carried everything we hadn't said out loud. It deepened. My hands found the back of his neck, pulling him closer. His fingers tangled in the belt of my robe. He smelled like the wine we hadn't opened yet, like something that had waited just long enough to be real. And then... HSSSSSSS. The pot on the stove hissed loudly, boiling over, water bubbling onto the burner, steam rising between us. We laughed, breaking apart, eyes wide like teenagers who almost got caught. He rushed to the stove, killing the heat, waving the steam away. "Guess we overcooked the moment," he said, grinning. I smiled, breathless. Better than undercooking it. We stood there in the steam, a mess of garlic, wet pasta, and burning tension. And somehow, it felt perfect. Messy. Real. Alive. 2 days passed. No knocks. No texts. No heat between tangled sheets or laughter over burnt pasta. Just silence. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that echoes. The kind that fills the room with what's missing. I told myself it was good. A pause. A breath. But the truth? I missed him. Missed the way his fingers brushed mine on purpose. The way he smiled like he already knew what I was about to say. And then, the phone rang. Bianca. I stared at the screen, thumb frozen over the answer button. Her name lit up like a warning flare. I took a breath and pressed accept. "Hey, sweetie," she chirped. "Are you busy?" I forced a smile into my voice. "Not at all." She kept talking, her voice as familiar as the scent of old recipes and childhood birthdays. "I just got back from visiting my sister in Houston," she said. "God, I hate the traffic there. Anyway, Mackay told me he dropped off some food the other day?" My stomach tightened. "Yeah," I said, walking slowly to the window, pulling the curtain aside. "It was lovely. Tell him thank you. He said he fixed your sink too." I swallowed. He did. It's working perfectly now. There was a pause, soft but sharp. "You know, he's been glowing lately," she said with a little laugh. "Like, annoyingly cheerful. Keep mentioning you, actually. Says you're easy to talk to. It's sweet." My hand trembled just enough that I had to set the phone down on the speaker. "Oh," I said, voice thin. "He's a good kid. I swear, he's always been drawn to you," she continued, completely unaware she was carving a hole in my chest with every word. "Even when he was little, he'd light up when we stopped by your place. Said you had the fancy tea and always smelled like cookies." I forced out a chuckle. "That sounds like him." Then came the words. The ones that broke the quiet lie I'd been living in. "You've always been like a sister to me, Nathalia." My throat clenched. Bianca, who held my hand at Gail's funeral. Bianca, who taught me how to bake lemon bars when I couldn't stop crying in year 2 of widowhood. Bianca, whose son now slept in the memory of my sheets. "I'm lucky to have you in our lives," she said, kind and warm and honest. Tears burned behind my eyes. And all I could do was whisper, "Me too." We hung up not long after. And I stood there, alone in my kitchen, the same place where he'd kissed me 2 days ago, where pasta water boiled over like it couldn't hold itself in. Now it was just me. And guilt. And the sound of my own breath, shaking. Because I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. And the person who trusted me the most? She didn't even see it coming. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I wasn't tired, but because the truth doesn't let you rest. It hangs over you like heat in a room with no windows. Pressing. Lingering. Bianca's words kept spinning in my mind like a broken record. "You've always been like a sister to me." And Mackay's smile haunted me even more. The way he looked at me in the kitchen that night. Like I was something more than a woman twice his age with a robe that slipped too easily. Like I was his. But I wasn't. I couldn't be. So I sat on the edge of my bed with my phone in my hand and my heart in my throat. And I typed the message that felt like cutting my own pulse. Me, we need to stop. I stared at the screen. My chest caved in. The reply came fast, too fast. Mackay, why? Just that. One word, holding more weight than I was ready for. I closed my eyes. Tried to breathe. Then typed. Me, your mom suspects. I can't lose her. I can't lose myself. 3 dots blinked for a moment. Then it disappeared. Then blinked again. And then. Mackay, but I love you. I stared at it. The words hit harder than I expected. Like they cracked through my bones, not just my heart. Love. No one had said that word to me in years. Not with meaning. Not like it could actually move mountains. And now it was sitting on my screen, from a boy who shouldn't have ever been more than a memory in family photo albums. My hand shook as I typed. Me, then love me enough to let me go. No emoji. No punctuation. Just the rawness of a truth I didn't want to speak out loud. I didn't wait for a reply. I turned off my phone. Set it on the nightstand like it might explode if I looked at it again. Then I laid back in bed, alone this time, staring at the ceiling like it owed me some kind of answer. And in that silence, I realized something. I hadn't lost him to distance. I hadn't lost him to time. I was giving him up. Because sometimes, doing the right thing feels exactly like heartbreak. And loving someone means knowing you're not what they need to carry forward. So I let him go. Not because I didn't want him. But because I loved him enough to let the story end here. I sit by the window now more than I used to. Not because I expect anything. But because it's the only place the light comes in the way it used to when he was here. The knock never came back. Not once. Just the hum of distant traffic, the occasional bark from next door's mutt, and the way the wind taps gently against the glass, like it's trying to remind me of something I don't want to forget. I wear his hoodie sometimes. Not out of sadness. But because it still smells like him. Faintly, like cedar and that cheap laundry detergent that never really washed out. Sometimes I'll catch myself pulling the sleeves over my hands, closing my eyes, and letting my mind drift back to that weekend. Back to the feel of his fingertips tracing my skin like a map he wanted to memorize. Back to the moment his eyes met mine and didn't flinch, didn't look away. Back to when I felt something I didn't know I was still allowed to feel. Wanted. Desirable. Alive. And it's strange, really, how quickly everything happened. How something so small, a knock, a bag of groceries, a crooked smile, could unravel a life that had been stitched into silence for years. But that's the thing about moments. They don't need permission. They don't care about age, or friendship, or guilt. They come in like a breeze through an open window, unexpected, uninvited, and they leave just as suddenly. But you remember them. God, do you remember them? And maybe that's all some love stories are meant to be. Not a forever. But a shift. A ripple in the still water. A weekend that wakes you up from the coma of routine. A kiss that reminds you you're still here. Still capable of burning. Still human. I haven't seen Mackay since that last message. Sometimes I think I see him, a shadow across the street, a laugh that sounds too much like his, a passing face in a crowd that makes my heart trip. But it's never him. It can't be. Because I asked him to go. And he loved me enough to listen. And now, I sit by this window, drinking tea that's too strong, wrapped in a hoodie that's too big, holding on to something that's already gone. But not really. Because even now, when everything's quiet again. When the only sound is the ticking of the clock and the soft rustle of the curtains. I can still hear his voice. Feel his hand. Remember how it felt to be seen. Sometimes love isn't a lifetime. Sometimes it's a weekend that shifts the world inside you. And in the final truth of all this, what I know now more than ever is this. I was 56. He was 19. And for 3 days, I wasn't invisible. I was wanted. Desired. Seen. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough.